The garden was immaculate, new roof, pool maintained, a house that screamed. Someone still lived there, still cared, still came home at the end of the day. But Nancy Guthrie had not been inside that house for 103 days, and the welcome mat on her front porch. Investigators took it. Not the door, not the windows, the mat. That single detail, more than anything the sheriff has said in 3 press conferences, tells you exactly what kind of case this is. To understand why a welcome mat became evidence, you have to go back to a quiet street in Tucson, Arizona, in a gated community where nobody locks their doors at night because nobody ever needed to. You have to understand who Nancy Guthrie was before the cameras came, before the federal task force, before her daughter Savannah, the woman millions of Americans wake up to every morning on the Today Show, had to sit on national television and pretend the world wasn't ending in real time behind her eyes. Nancy was 75, a widow, a grandmother who tended that garden herself, kneeling in the dirt at sunrise because she said the heat got brutal by 10. Neighbors describe her the way people describe their own mothers: kind, independent, sharp, the kind of woman who remembered your dog's name. She had just put a new roof on the house. She had been thinking years back about selling, but never did. Her routines were predictable. Her life was small in the way that good lives often are. And then on a night in the middle of a Tucson summer, someone walked across that welcome mat. And Nancy Guthrie was gone. If you've been following this case from the beginning and you want every update the moment it drops, do me a favor and subscribe to Redacted Files Lab. I'm not letting this one go. There are details in the files that the mainstream coverage skipped, and I post the moment new information surfaces. Here's the part that bothers me, the part that bothers everyone who has actually looked at the timeline. In the first 72 hours of this investigation, things moved fast. Deputies were dispatched to a specific address. There was a person of interest. There was a vehicle located at a bar. There was momentum, the kind of momentum that, in any other case, leads to a press conference, a name, a charge. And then, nothing. The momentum didn't slow down. It stopped, like a power line being cut. 3.5 months later, the federal task force, FBI agents working side by side with Pima County Sheriff's detectives, held a meeting. The buzz around that meeting was loud enough that local reporters were tracking it. People expected an announcement. They expected a name. What they got, according to one source close to the investigation, was a check-in, a wellness check. Are you okay? Do you have what you need? Are you holding up? That was the meeting. After 100 days, a retired FBI agent I trust said something on a podcast that stuck with me. She said this case feels like Atlas with the world on his shoulders. She said she's worked task forces for decades, and she has rarely seen one where, from the outside, there appears to be less forward movement. Then she said something more important. She said the lack of visible movement doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means they are building, quietly, methodically, against one or more individuals, because the alternative explanation that the trail is genuinely cold is one she refused to accept. But here's where the redacted files start opening up, because what we know about the night Nancy disappeared doesn't fit any standard playbook. There was no forced entry that the public has been told about. There was no ransom demand. There was no digital exhaust suggesting Nancy was in contact with anyone she shouldn't have been. Her phone, her accounts, her routines, all of it scrubbed by federal analysts. And what they have apparently not found, after 100 days, is the one thing that solves almost every modern case: the digital fingerprint. In 2025, when a 75-year-old woman vanishes from her own bedroom in the middle of the night, the trail is supposed to be there. The Ring cameras, the neighbor's Tesla Sentry mode parked across the street, the cell tower pings, the license plate readers at the subdivision gate, the doorbell logs, the motion sensors. We live inside a surveillance grid we built ourselves, and that grid is supposed to make a case like this solvable inside a week. So why isn't it? This is the part where I want to walk you through 3 theories, not because any of them are confirmed, because the way investigators are behaving, the way the family is behaving, and the way the digital evidence is or is not behaving tells you everything about which theory is being taken seriously inside that task force room. The first theory is the one nobody wants to say out loud: a romance scam, a long con. There's a case in California that surfaced recently. An elderly couple found in their home in what authorities initially treated as a tragedy of unknown circumstances. As friends began to talk, a darker picture emerged. The wife had been communicating for months with someone she believed was the actor Tom Selleck. He wasn't. He was a predator using a celebrity face to extract money, affection, and trust from a lonely woman whose children had already taken away her credit cards. They had locked the front door. They didn't know there was a back door. They didn't know she would find a way to keep sending money in cash, in gift cards, in bank transfers her children couldn't see. When everything collapsed, the result was catastrophic. 2 lives lost. 1 predator, who probably doesn't even know their names. The question, the one that quietly circulated in private forums for weeks after Nancy went missing, was simple. Could something like that have been at play? Could a 75-year-old widow living alone in a quiet Arizona neighborhood have been talking to someone she shouldn't have been? Could that someone have eventually decided that talking wasn't enough? The retired agent's answer was direct. If that were the case, the digital exhaust would have led investigators somewhere by now. There would be messages. There would be a payment trail. There would be a phone in another country lighting up at 3 a.m. After 100 days of FBI analysts going through every bite of Nancy's digital life, that trail apparently isn't there. Or if it is, they are sitting on it. Both are possible. Only one is comforting. The second theory is darker and more recent, a pattern of incidents that law enforcement has begun calling wrench attacks. They have been clustering in California, and they work like this. The target is identified through their digital footprint, often someone with visible wealth, often someone with cryptocurrency holdings or accessible bank accounts. Intruders enter the home. They restrain the resident. They force the resident to unlock devices using face or fingerprint. They drain whatever is accessible. Then they leave. Sometimes the resident survives. Sometimes they do not. A digital security expert quoted by Fox Digital floated the possibility that something like this could have played out at Nancy's home. The theory hinges on a mastermind operating from a distance and a crew operating up close. The motive in this version is purely financial. And here's the question. Did Nancy have the kind of assets that would attract that kind of crew? The honest answer is probably not. The retired agent doesn't believe Nancy was holding cryptocurrency. The neighborhood doesn't read as a target-rich environment for digital wealth extraction. And again, the digital trail, the surveillance of her financial accounts in the days before she vanished, would almost certainly have shown movement by now. There has been no public indication of any such movement. So we are left with the third theory, the one that no one wants to articulate cleanly because it is the most personal, the most unsettling, and the most consistent with the evidence pattern we are seeing, or rather the evidence pattern we are not seeing. Someone knew her. Someone knew her routines. Someone knew the gate code or knew how to get around it. Someone knew which window, which door, which moment of the night. Someone knew that a 75-year-old woman alone in a house with a beautiful garden and a new roof would not put up the kind of fight that leaves a scene impossible to clean. Someone may have known her well enough to be the last face she saw and not the face she expected to see. If you're still with me and you want the next update, the second I have something concrete, hit subscribe. This is one of those cases where the next break could come from anywhere. A neighbor, a tip, a forensic result, and I'm not going to let it pass without covering it. There is something else in the redacted files that I want to put in front of you, because the local press has barely touched it. The sheriff has changed how he communicates with the family. In the early weeks, there were direct conversations between the sheriff's office and Nancy Guthrie. The sheriff implied in his early interviews that he was personally in contact with her. That contact, according to recent reporting, has now ended. The family is no longer speaking directly to the sheriff. They are speaking to the FBI. That is not a small detail. In law enforcement, when a victim's family transitions from one agency to another for primary communication, it almost always means one of two things. Either the family lost confidence in the original point of contact, or the original point of contact was, for reasons that may be tactical or political or personal, no longer the right fit. There is a lot happening around the Pima County Sheriff's Office right now, separate from this case, and reasonable people are asking whether those dynamics are bleeding into the Guthrie investigation. Reasonable people, including apparently the Guthrie family. Savannah, for her part, has been seen disappearing from the Today Show, set in the closing minutes of broadcast. The Internet noticed. The Internet always notices. People ask the obvious question, is there news? Is something breaking? the more honest answer is the one the retired agent gave. Grief moves in waves, untold, unbearable, unpredictable waves. And a woman who anchors a national morning show is not always going to be able to sit in front of cameras pretending the wave hasn't reached her chair. She has young children at home. She has a security team that I'm told is serious, the kind serious people hire when they don't know who did this and they don't know if that person is finished. That is not paranoia. That is mathematics. Until investigators name someone, the family does not know what they are protecting against. And then there is the house, the garden Nancy built, the pool, the new roof, the mat that is no longer on the porch. The HOA, in recent weeks, has been sending notices. They want the visitors to stop. They want the flowers off the lawn. They want the streamers and content creators and grieving strangers to find somewhere else to stand. The driveway now has chains across it. New no trespassing signs. I understand both sides. The neighbors I have spoken to are mostly kind about it. They say the same thing. They just want Nancy to come home. They don't mind the strangers. But other neighbors are exhausted. Their quiet street, the kind of street where the biggest disturbance used to be a sprinkler, malfunction at dawn, has become a pilgrimage site. The retired agent put it bluntly. People are going to keep coming to that house. Look at what happened with the O.J. Simpson property. They sold the bricks. Iconic locations attract attention, and attention attracts attention, and the cycle does not end when the HOA wants it to end. What the family will do with the house remains an open question. The property has been turned back over to them, which is itself a quiet but significant detail. When law enforcement releases a residence back to a family, it means they have extracted what they believe they needed. The forensic phase, the search phase, the physical evidence collection, that part is done. Whatever was in that house that was going to help build a case, they already have it. Whatever they don't have, they are looking for somewhere else. Which brings us to the part of this story I cannot stop thinking about. 3.5 months, a federal task force, detectives working full-time, family members in regular contact with the FBI, a residence that has been released, a welcome mat that was taken into evidence, a daughter on national television navigating grief in real time, and not one charge, not one named suspect, not one public confirmation of what investigators actually believe happened. There are two possibilities. The first is that they know more than they are saying. They are sitting on a name, building a case strong enough to survive a defense attorney, gathering the kind of evidence that puts someone away for the rest of their life, rather than letting them walk on a technicality. That is the version every law enforcement veteran I trust believes is happening. They believe in the work. They believe in the people doing it. They believe the silence is strategy. The second possibility is the one we don't want to consider, that the case has gone cold not because of incompetence, but because of something more uncomfortable. Whoever took Nancy Guthrie understood the surveillance grid better than the surveillance grid understood them. They knew which cameras to avoid. They knew which devices to disable. They knew how to leave a residence in a state that yields almost nothing forensically. They were patient. They were prepared. And they were close enough to know exactly when to act. That is the version that should keep you up at night. Because if that version is true, this is not just a missing persons case. It is a blueprint, and blueprints get reused. So here is what I want from you. I'm not asking for a like. I'm not asking for a thumbs up. I'm asking for your honest opinion in the comments. If you had to bet right now on what is happening inside the task force room, which version do you believe? Are they building a quiet, airtight case against someone they already have in their sights? Or has the digital age, the age that was supposed to make these cases unsolvable for the perpetrator, somehow produced the opposite, a case so cleanly executed that even the FBI's best analysts cannot find the seam? Tell me which version you believe, and tell me why. I read every comment on this channel, and I bring the best questions back into the next video. Subscribe to Redacted Files Lab if you haven't already. I'm covering this case until there is an answer, and I am working on something next that is, in some ways, even harder to explain than this one. It involves a piece of smart home technology that contradicted 3 eyewitnesses. You're going to want to be here for it, and if you have information about Nancy Guthrie, anything at all, no matter how small you think it is, the number is 1-800. Call FBI. Somewhere out there, someone knows something. Somewhere out there, someone walked across a welcome mat in the middle of the night, and someone is waiting for that person to finally be named.